was right there. She drove right past us. High off that crack. So, you know, what do we do? What are we saying? It's all right to do this, and then at the same time keep an ounce on you at all times. I don't know where we're going with this. But an education of this to as many as possible, and not let them become, let's say, unattached. We stay together all the time with them. We can make this happen, but it's going to have to take one-on-one, talk with the brothers and sisters, letting them see that it's not good to do this at all. Beyond an ounce. I'm only the same as brother.
Okay, Ron?
Oh,
I'm sorry. No,
I just had a
response.
It's just a response. Let me say this to you all. It ain't I don't believe it's a mother or father in this room that is no different than I am. And I'm a mother, I'm a father. I'm a mother too some days. That's right. Yeah, I'm a mother some days too, but I'm a father. And I had some real solid ideas. You know, I ain't sitting here at 70 thinking that, and some of my ideas are reflective of my age. But I want to say this in this way. You cannot have a conversation with them about a single entity issue without the wraparound. It has to be a holistic conversation about it when you talk to them. It ain't you're right. You're not saying that it's all right for you to have that ounce or the 2 ounce if it passed, and then you can do anything you want to do with that ounce. It ain't, to me, it is no different than anything else. It's like the alcohol. We forced the alcohol industry to say you can drink, but you have to drink responsibly because, see, you're responsible. And people are responsible themselves individually for their own behavior. So no, we're not saying that you can do this and be reckless. We don't want, you can do this, but we're going to still have our other values and everything associated with what it is that we do in our society. Because we had to do that. And like Ron said, I'm a proponent of this. We got to get the police out of our community. This is a step. We got to get the police out of our community. There are communities in this country that the police don't even bother about coming in because the community controls what it is that they do in their community. And in this community, my brother Kadir, that community has been an example of what we can do in our community and how we can go about doing it because we have a set of values and norms that we have permeated in terms of the community and how we operate, and we accept nothing less. We can do that, but we have to start somewhere. And this criminal justice place, this criminal justice is the first place for African Americans and other people of color. We got to get them out of the community because if not, what's going to happen is that we have gone through this stuff and backed them out, but they're going to be wearing us out because don't believe that they're going to stop. They haven't stopped. They haven't stopped enforcing marijuana because the de-criminalization bill talks about 1 ounce. They're out there right now looking for people black people, not white people, who have more than 1 ounce. And nobody's carrying a measuring cup, brothers and sisters. I'm telling you, they ain't carrying no measuring cup, but they looking for people who got more than 1 ounce. That's exactly right. And the police chief didn't apologize the other day. She said she was shocked and amazed. That's what she said. She was shocked and amazed.
That they got caught.
That what the officer said, she was shocked and amazed about. Now, if you be a police for a minute, you have to know that what that police officer did on that tape was typical average police behavior when somebody's taping you. So no, she was doing that for somebody, but it wasn't for anybody who got a half an ounce of scent. But it's a holistic conversation, Brother Kadir. It's not about a single conversation. We can't give up anything in that process. So when you're talking to them, you're talking to them about the whole value system, everything. We're not saying that we want you to take this and then go off. Just because alcohol is legal, we don't still support. I don't support people just going drinking liquor. I think that's the wrongest thing in the world. But
and we don't support them driving while under the influence.
That's what I'm saying.
We don't support them driving while drunk.
We somewhere along the line, these are the first steps. Certain churches, certain religious backgrounds, or whatever you believe in, it doesn't even, it's not even allowed there, but some still do it. I'm gonna go on by our background in the Nation of Islam. It's not tolerated at all. So if it's gonna be a community we can start at, then somewhere along the line, it has to start someplace that's gonna be really strict upon it, and it can't even come down the street. See, if I had it my way, or if I had spots in Washington, D.C., we'll have places where you can't come in the block smoking a cigarette. You won't be allowed to come down there. So I'm only saying this now. We starting somewhere now, but at the same time, I mean, we know we're stroking the cat. So how do we get involved with this and really shut it down altogether? Passing the bill, that's what the other people say do, because they have interest in getting paid for legislation. But what about really throwing the brick and let's put an end to this? And that's why I want to see this. That's what I want to do.
Okay, Sister Nkechi?
Oh, yeah, no, I was just going to say a couple of real quick things. I see just a definite connection and correlation between the two presentations, okay? And what Adeyemi and Baba and Celine was saying in terms of this event on the 25th, which I understand is supposed to have young people and folk who are involved in gangs or currently blah, blah, blah. And the education that Seema and
Celine?
Oh, Celine, oh, you were dealing with both. Okay. Was dealing with that needs to happen. A lot of that can also, the jump off point can really be the forum on the 25th with that as well. Also, a question, Colorado and Washington, did they have expungement that was part and parcel? So they did not, okay. So how did they deal with folk who had this on their records before and then now it's legal and all that?
They haven't, to my knowledge, if they're dealing with it, it's as of recent. They didn't deal with it. And also they didn't deal with the type of racial and disparate impacts because it was mostly white people they were talking about.
They didn't. They haven't done anything about it at all. And then they excluded all the people who have criminal, so they've written into their legislation, if you have a criminal background, you can't even participate in the industry or apply for a job. So the people who are actually have these issues, right? Exactly.
In fact, that's an instance of, some people don't understand structural and institutional racism.
Absolutely.
That's a structure right there.
That's right.
That means the white people who didn't, you targeted black folks for the arrest, so you got arrested. You didn't target white people. So when you get around to this end of it, white people will have no records, black people will have records, therefore they're excluded. See, that's why it takes a longer conversation, but this is a fundamentally important conversation, because the racial justice lens which we operate from in IBW becomes very important, and it's very exciting to hear the discussions about the next steps and how this can happen in a very, very effective way. Because at the end of the day, and let me just reinforce this point, every institution has a right to articulate their moral values. So some people will say, you should not smoke marijuana, you should not That's fine. I think almost all of us in this room would say, whatever you do, you should do responsibly. There's all kind of evidence out there now that exists is that there is no significant difference between the consumption of alcohol and the smoking of marijuana. Now, you might move to the other things that may be more debatable, but on the level of marijuana, it is, all kind of studies have been out there to show. So, what was happening with the violence and all that stuff was doing with Prohibition. That's why we showed the film, The House I Live In. It showed the history of how certain groups are targeted for criminal punishment. And the violence, all this stuff that was going on around it. Now, the mafia, they moved on to something else, but they ain't doing it around alcohol now. Because that was taken out once you got the... And by the way, even in that film, it showed that the white folks and the rich people were still drinking. There wasn't no problem. It was the poor people who was having the issue, who were being targeted. And then you had all of this violence and killing and so forth associated with that, right? So the point becomes, we cannot bear the brunt of the criminal justice system criminalizing us, particularly for a behavior that, certain institutions say, thou shalt not drink. Well, that's fine. Some other people drink, and they never ever go out and kill nobody, smack nobody, run down the street and run through no crowds. But some do. Just like the lady who came down the highway some years ago, she was drunk, and so she wasn't on marijuana, she was on alcohol. So the point is that could happen in any event. But we ought to be, as Ron said, we ought to be teaching and sharing our values and telling people to be responsible and all those kind of things. But we have to level the playing field because we're the ones who are being destroyed by this war on drugs. And we need to, decriminalize, we need to, and if regulation is going to be effective. And then there's another side that we've always pushed. We've got to get investment in our communities. That's a longer conversation. But every time we talk about it, we say end the war on drugs, invest in America's dark ghettos. Because the economic underpinnings have been stripped. There's economic underdevelopment. So that's always been our mantra, and that's always the line that we pushed. I want to put a proposal forward.
I have one more.
Go ahead.
Real quick, I'm sorry. And it was just going to the whole thing about communities, healthy families, getting the police out, et cetera, et cetera. Perhaps IBW can put forth the whole model of the Black Family Summit. Maybe there should be Black Family Summits in all the different communities that bring together the different professional organizations to provide the mental health stuff, psychological, the doctor stuff, the nurses, all of those parts that are part of the Black Family Summit that's part of IBW. Maybe there could be models across and around, and that can, not that that's taking the place of the police and not policing or anything like that, but it's helping to provide healthy families, healthy communities, or something along those lines.
Well, certainly that's one of the things we want to try to do. Now, I want to move because I've been trying to think in advance of what we could, limited capacity, what we could do with IBW to advance this proposal. And I don't know. Hopefully, Reverend Evans will come back. The idea that I sort of preliminarily discussed with a couple of our people was this. The faith community is typically very, very important in these kinds of initiatives, and they can be a source of both being advanced, but also a source of resistance because of the moral nature of it. So what we want to propose doing, and in the next time frame, perhaps within the next 3 weeks or 2 to 3 weeks, is, Reverend Gravely, we're going to need your help with this, obviously, is we'd like to convene some faith leaders. We'd like to have a faith leaders luncheon, or maybe it should be an evening session. But anyways, we want to bring some faith leaders together, and key media leaders. Now, some of them are already doing this. WPFW is obviously very much on board, but we would also invite them to be at the table, the news director and maybe the program director, whomever. We Act Radio, I'm sure is already on board. But also the Informer, which is a major outlet in the city, and as well as the Afro, and there may be other outlets. If we could get HUR to the table, that would be great. So it would be a combination, really, of selected faith leaders. We already know some who are already advocates on this issue, but we would also try to identify. And that's where, again, we will need Reverend Evans to help us as well as you, Reverend Gravely, to get, not hundreds, but, maybe 15 or so faith leaders to come. And the idea would be for, again, Malik and Seema, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Emergency.
Would be to be there with the briefing and the talking points, because therefore these folks then would be able to then go back to their congregations and or organizations within their respective churches to demystify or to explain this initiative. I mean, that would be our goal. So they would have the information. They would be equipped to know what this is about. Because many of them are out there, probably even some of them who are our dear friends, maybe not clearly understanding this, what already is on the book, number one. Secondly, what is being proposed and what the follow-up is. So we can have a vigorous just like we've had here, a good conversation about it. But it would be important, again, to in relatively brief form, to have what's the de-crim bill, what's Initiative 71, and what are some of the proposed steps that are sort of the follow-up. But also from the point of view of harm reduction. So people clearly understand what's the impact, who's being hurt. I mean, just what you just laid out is dumb, looking through that. And Ron Hampton has mentioned this, or somebody mentioned this when we were talking about the criminal the population in the jails. I mean, it's almost like 0 white people in the jails in Washington, D.C., even when it was 70%. I mean, this is like stunning. How could that possibly be? And then for you to be going through all these records, and I mean, that just, I mean, so that's the kind of information that faith leaders need to be exposed to. And with that, they're then more confident to understand what's going on and to move forward. Yes?
Does it have to be a lunch or
It could be
dinner?
dinner, it could be dinner.
Well, the reason why I ask is we already have a built-in vehicle. Every Wednesday morning, there's a Wednesday clergy fellowship that meets, and we go around to different churches. And it's made up of a group of interdenominational ministers, pastors. Then on Mondays, there's the Baptist group. They meet every Monday, but there are always morning meetings. So we could certainly set something up if people are able to come out in the morning.
Oh, you mean be on the agenda?
Is it,
Those are the kind of agenda items that we address all
Is
the
that,
time.
is that held in the southeast?
The one,
Whether the pastors?
well, the Wednesday Clergy Fellowship moves around. The moderator is Reverend Dr. Frank Reed, who is the pastor of First Baptist Church of Randolph.
They gave us 5 minutes once, and it was a great 5 minutes.
But we can
yeah.
give you more than 5 minutes, I can
Yeah,
assure
well,
you.
it's not really us who needs the 5 minutes, it's the folks need to talk to each other about it, yeah.
So we might want to double up and do both, actually.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but I guess what I would be looking for though is to select, the advantage of being in the meetings for even 5 minutes or 10 minutes is that we have a captive audience of all of them. That's one thing. But I think that my preference would be, because even with some of our progressive friends, they have people in their congregations. You could be very progressive as a pastor, and your congregation could be still recalcitrant. These folks here would need the message as well. So the point, I would prefer a session where you have more time, where we know we've got an hour to an hour and a half, break some bread, whatever, and then have a real opportunity for engagement, questions, debate and discussion. So when they leave, they really are equipped, as opposed to you come and you make a 10-minute presentation and not much time. Maybe we should do both. But if I had a choice between being able to speak to 50 ministers only for 10 minutes, let's say, or selecting 15 ministers and talking to them for 90 minutes, I would take the latter. But let's just see. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, one, I'd use the larger one as a threshold